morning. My name is Julia Honigsberger and I'm a Principal Consultant at Thorogood. And during this session, myself and my colleague Paul Balaski are going to take a quick look at analytic solutions on the Salesforce platform. Quick look at the agenda. I'm going to start off by introducing the Force.com platform, and you might find that it's a bit more than you thought. We're then going to go and look at 3 client use cases where we've delivered analytics to customers on Salesforce data, and then look at 3 live demonstrations where software vendors have particularly focused their delivery on being able to interface with Salesforce. And then, as Trevor mentioned at the beginning, we're delighted to have Gavin Ginnan with us today. Gavin's a master enterprise architect with Salesforce, and he's going to talk about some of the exciting stuff that's coming out of Salesforce around analytics, not only within the Salesforce environment, but more broadly to customers. So, more than just CRM. So, although probably it's best known for its CRM solution, there's an awful lot within the Salesforce stable. This is a section of their tools, and for example, if you look at Thorogood there, that was an acquisition by Salesforce in 2010, which is particularly focused on building consumer apps. So lots of programming languages, things like Java and Python, some that I have quite honestly never heard of, but a lot of development tools within that to build consumer apps. Then you've got things like Site.com. Previously Salesforce, the ability to build websites for customers. Database.com, interesting and similar really to the Amazon situation where Salesforce recognised that they needed a database to deliver their applications. It uses Oracle. It's in the cloud, as Trevor mentioned, so it has all of the challenges around multi-tenancy, and the Oracle instance used with Salesforce is optimized for multi-tenancy, and they now provide that as a platform as a service. So it's got all of the good tools that you'd expect within a database environment, things like security, authoring tools, etc., but all delivered through the cloud as a service. I'm going to focus on just 3 areas of this for the morning. The first one is Force.com. Force.com is a platform as a service that's used to deliver Salesforce CRM. And we're going to look at some of the ways in which you can extend Salesforce through some of the application extensions within the Force platform. I'm also going to touch on Chatter. For those of you not familiar with Chatter, it's a collaboration environment that allows groups to discuss, upload information, really share and collaborate around an organisation. And the third one I'm going to look at very briefly is the App Exchange, simply because it's actually relevant to some of the demonstrations and customer use cases that we're going to talk through today. So, why move outside of Salesforce? Because it does have some reporting capabilities within it, it has some dashboarding capabilities. So what are the drivers then for people who use Salesforce actually moving outside of that environment? And I think there are 2 main ones really. I think the first one is a need really for an increased analytic capability. So if you look at what's available in Salesforce CRM and Chatter, it's very much around what I would probably call operational reporting. It's reports, it's dashboards, but relatively static. So what we're losing is our cut and slice and dice, our ability to switch in and switch out measures. So if that's what you're looking to do with your Salesforce CRM data, quite often a good solution will be to take that data out of Salesforce. I think the second driver is very much around integrating your Salesforce data with other data within your organisation or from outside your organisation. So Salesforce does have the ability to bring in extra data into the Salesforce platform, but the ability to merge and do mashups and all of that kind of good stuff that we need to do when we're integrating data can become a challenge, and therefore taking it out maybe makes it much more flexible to bring it back into your main data environment. So I've got 3 use cases that I'm going to fly through here where we've done exactly that for customers. And the first one is a customer who was looking to analyse their contract compliance. CPG customer, their sales reps go into stores, have a look at what's on display and do a retail audit. And they use for that Salesforce. So they're storing all of their retail audit data within Salesforce. But in order to actually look at compliancy to on-shelf availability, whether the stores are actually putting their products onto the shelves or not, that's either a really labour-intensive job, somebody has to go in and tick off on a list what's there. What they've done is they use a software solution called Planorama. It's not Panorama, it's Planorama. And Planorama is an in-store digital measuring solution. So it's got very, very sophisticated image recognition software. So all you need to do is go in, take a picture of the shelves, load those into Planorama, and it will translate those pictures into on-shelf availability. Now clearly the value is being able to say what the retail audit is showing versus the compliance to that on-shelf availability. And for that we're utilising SQL Server, so the data is coming out of Salesforce from both Salesforce and Planorama, being merged in SQL Server and then delivered through a front end to the users. That front end bit actually isn't quite nailed down yet. We're still working with the customer to decide what the technology will be. But they've got two key drivers, and again I think this is another reason why taking it out of Salesforce in this instance is the right approach. The first one is it needs to be mobile. We're talking about Salesforce guys who are on the road doing lots of in-store visits. But of course they can't always guarantee that they're going to have connectivity, and that is one of the challenges of any cloud-based software. And so what we're looking there to do is to make sure that the solution that's in place for them has an offline capability so they can still get the metrics, the dashboards, etc. while they're in store talking to their customers. Second use case, again looking at sales activity. This is for a life science organisation. Now we talked about the Force.com platform, and one of the things you can do is enhance the Salesforce environment, and that's exactly what an organisation called Viva have done. Viva have built a template for life science Salesforce sitting on top of the Salesforce CRM system. The CEO of Viva was previously a VP of technology at Salesforce. So they've enhanced the platform, they've added value to it by customising it for life science. And it holds things like call data, when they went, who they spoke to, but also time off territory, when they're doing training, when they're doing downtime for other reasons. What they wanted to do was combine that with their sales data, which was in SAP. And by doing that, they'd be able to look at sales effectiveness, the effectiveness of sales versus visits. In this scenario, we used ClickView, and we extracted the data into, as Alan just mentioned, a QVD, a ClickView data model, from where we could build some fairly powerful dashboards to allow them to look at the relationship between sales visits, off territory time versus sales. And I think the really neat thing with this is we've then embedded that ClickView dashboard back into Salesforce. So this is where Salesforce, as a very open architecture, allows you to embed web pages, web parts, all sorts of things within the Salesforce application. And that's what we've done here, which allows a sales manager or somebody using the system to stay in Viva and actually look at the information in a pretty powerful dashboard using ClickView. Before I talk about my third use case, I just want to highlight that Salesforce recognises, many of the cloud vendors, the importance of being able to integrate with other applications, either in the cloud or on-premise. And they have a range of connectors that they deliver through Force.com Connect. So at the far right, we've got things like the developer toolkits, that Java and .NET environment, so you can really program into the Salesforce framework. We've got people like Informatica delivering ETL. We've got some native connectors to ERP, so I can transfer data between Salesforce and SAP, for example. But the two that we're going to look at this morning are around the native desktop connectors and the mashups. So the native connectors are where I can use my front-end tools, things like Excel, Word, Lotus Notes, and I can actually interact with Salesforce, get to the data, bring it into my desktop environment and start to use it there. And we're going to have a look at that as a demo. Number two, mashups from Exchange. This is an interesting area. I called out earlier the application, the App Exchange. Salesforce have recognised that in order to exploit all of this extra capability that they have, it's very important to be able to get those interfaces, those applications to the marketplace. And the App Exchange is their sort of marketplace onto their community of users. And we can see down this, my mouse doesn't work, but down the sort of left-hand side here, we've got all sorts of things like sales, marketing, IT. And down the bottom, we've got an analytics area to our App Exchange. And within that, we can see the vendors who are really in the analytics and BI space are putting their connectors into Salesforce. We've got Tableau, we've got Click, Burst, all sorts of vendors there that are offering connectors into the Salesforce environment. And that's exactly what our third use case here and one of our demos today is going to look at. So this is a leading consumer goods company, many tens of thousands of employees, and what they're interested in is, what are people looking at? What are people accessing within their internal information environment? And then what are they saying about it to try and understand what's important to people? So they use Chatter. And as we said, it's enterprise collaboration, software as a service. It has the concept of groups and topics. So you might be in the marketing group and one of your topics might be one of your product launches, and you can start a discussion going around there. So it's a bit like Twitter really, but it's a little bit more extensive in that it allows you to upload documents, to share and collaborate all sorts of information. So you're not restricted to that sort of 140 characters, it's much broader than that. They've also put Google Analytics onto their internal information portals, so they can see where people are clicking, what sort of things within their information systems they're looking at. So they're doing clickstream analysis within Google Analytics. They've got Chatter information stored within Salesforce. And what they're doing there is they're bringing that information directly into Tableau using that App Exchange connector for Tableau. Once it's in Tableau, they can start to create visualizations. They can put Google Analytics information alongside Chatter information. They can look at where people are joining Chatter conversations, what conversations they're joining. And it really gives them the ability to look at not only online behaviours for information, but also online behaviours for conversations as well. So three use cases where we're seeing Salesforce data being used for analytics. What I'm now going to do is pass over to my colleague Paul, and he's going to look at three different technologies, two from Microsoft and one from Tableau, where the vendors have specifically recognised the importance of being able to interface with Salesforce using that App Exchange approach.
Good morning, I'm Paul Balaski, Analytics Consultant at Thorogood and a Director. And it's fallen to me to sort of demonstrate some interface to Salesforce via these products. What I want to do before I go into sort of Power Query and Power BI and Tableau is just quickly show what can be done with Salesforce itself. I really just touch on what's available there. So within Salesforce itself, sort of pre-canned part of the product set, once the data's in, you've got the opportunity to create, and Julia made reference to these dashboards, and they essentially come as a series of visualizations and tables and out of the box. And I should just quickly introduce the sort of data that we're looking at, so it gives it some sort of context. We're looking at pipeline data, so we're looking at opportunities and accounts, opportunities by accounts, so the value of those opportunities and where they are in the pipeline. And we'll use the sort of CRM Salesforce nomenclature, so on target, on territory, all the way through to sale pending, closed, and won, just to give you some context to the data. So data goes into Salesforce, and these dashboards then can be made available and essentially out of the box. I can choose to click and drill in, get a bit more detail, so I've got the actual chart itself and then the data that underpins that chart. So as far as it goes, it gives a very good out-of-the-box overview of the data. Like Julia was saying, if I've got the ability I can filter, I can continue to customize, but it is just Salesforce data. There's no integration here. And you can run out of steam really in terms of analytics if I want to swap out measures and the rest of it. So one of the options that we have available, one of the options that I want to show here is Excel. Now within Excel, let me just have a look. I'm going to have to, Excel. There we are. I've got, what I've tried to do just to reduce time really is we've got these objects open, but I've just essentially got Excel opened. And you'll see within Excel we've got Power Query and Power Pivot. What I'm going to be showing really here is Power Query. So Power Query is essentially an extract, transform, load add-in to Excel. And what it does is it extends Excel's ability to take data from a range of external sources. One of those external sources is Salesforce. So, within Excel currently, you can go to data and connect to external sources. But what Power Query does is it just extends that and, like I say, gives some ETL functionality. So what we're looking at are some of the connectors that we have now in Power Query. And the two that we're interested in here is Salesforce Objects and Salesforce Reports. And it's, in particular Salesforce Reports, because what we're trying to do is lift out some unique sort of differences really between the products. So I'm looking at very much how you connect and the sort of connection experiences that you'll have as a user. So within Power Query, like I say, we have the objects, and we'll come on to that in a sec. And we also have the reports. And if I click on the reports, we'll see whether it prompts me to log in. No. Can I just ask, actually, one of the questions was, in the audience, how many people use Salesforce or have access to Salesforce? Okay, so it's a fair number. But with the vendors, and what we're finding is, and Julian alluded to it, that all of the vendors will have a Salesforce connector. So they see it as a very important aspect of the product offering, certainly from an analytic and reporting perspective. So back to the Power Query demonstration. So I've selected Salesforce Reports, and what it's done is it's gone into Salesforce and it's surfaced the reports that have been defined within Salesforce. And the value of that is that essentially it's a sort of proxy semantic. I can create a report within Salesforce with relevant columns and data items that I want included within that report, and make it available to my end users to generate into Excel. We'll see in a sec when we go to the objects, there are a large number of tables and views that go to make up the Salesforce schema. And for an end user to be able to navigate and understand that is quite an ask. So being able to just take a report that's been designed by somebody else, a request for data, can I have this report please? You've then got the opportunity to bring it in. But obviously the problem with that is it isn't completely self-serve because I've got to request the data. But I've got a report defined here, you see BI Update 2015. And what it allows me to do is just preview that report. So it says, okay, you've got 13 columns, and this is an example of the type of data that's in that report. And if I come across and edit, what it will do is it goes back to Salesforce, runs the report, and then returns the data. Relatively quick, but there isn't too much data in there. You'll see the ribbon at the top there. We're in the editor now. So there are some transformation objects and functions, and I'll come on to those in a sec. For the moment, I won't do much more than just load that data. It brings it in. I'll just rename that sheet report, so I know what I'm looking at. There we are. Yep. And the data is now in Excel, in effect. It's a sort of database table for you to use and work with as you wish. Let's go back again. Let's have a look at the second Salesforce option that we had there, which was the objects. So this is raw now. Essentially what we're getting is a list of, depending on permissions as well, this is an important aspect of this. So you have to have the rights to see these tables. And you'll also find if you're implementing this type of interface, not just with Excel, but with Tableau or Click, you also need to have access to the fields within the table. So the amount of security that can be applied at the Salesforce end obviously is quite extensive, and this does presuppose you've got access to these objects. But you'll see there are 195 objects. Those tables will support both a sort of account opportunity or leads, contacts, but also the chatter type information that Julia touched on as well. So that's all held within a particular database, and the logic's exactly the same. So I can choose a particular table, say accounts here, and if I choose to edit, it will bring through that account information. So that's very nice. I've now got that available to me. I can choose, as I've been saying, it is an element. There is an element of ETL here, so I can remove columns. I could choose to filter what to bring through. So I'm really only interested in customers, prospects, and partners here. And you've got things I can choose to. We take building postal code here. I'm going to split that column, and what I want to do is I want to take. So I'm saying, okay, up to the first space, give me the characters. Just give me those characters up to the first space. Press OK. And you'll see it's now split that postal code. And if I remove that, and I can call this postal district. So introduce a new. If I haven't spelled it right, that's good because you'll see it coming through as a typo. So there's my data. I'm happy with that. There are an array of other functions that you can use to manipulate the data and manage it before you bring it through. But at this point, I'm happy to take that. So I'll close and load that. So you'll see now I've got, within the spreadsheet, within the workbook, I've got 3 connections. Let me just rename that sheet so it's easy to follow when we go through to the next step. I've got 3 connections. All of those connections are to Salesforce. But in terms of integration, if I wanted to, obviously, I can go back to Power Query, and I could introduce data from another source, ERP, HR, Planorama, wherever. So as long as I've got the ability to connect through, I can bring that data through into another sheet. Once I've got the data here, and I'm still in Power Query, still within that add-in, I've got the opportunity here to merge. So I'm now going to integrate two pieces of data. In this case, I'm going to merge my opportunity with my account. So the opportunity tab was one I'd done earlier, and I just saved it, but it brought it through just for time purposes. So here I'm going to map on account ID and ID, and again, working with the Salesforce data, you do need to understand these relationships, and some of them do get quite complex. So it can be parent ID to ID. There are resources out on the web actually to support all of that. So there's schemas and definitions out there that will help with all of this sort of work. So you see I've matched the 2 tables. I've got 577 of the first 577, so it's 577 rows. I'll say OK. Notice it's brought me back. Now I'm still in the edit mode. If I click on that end column, which is provided me, what it gives me are all the fields that are in the account table, the second table. So I can choose which of those fields I want to bring through. Again, it's all part of the ETL type functionality. And where's my postal district? There it is. Post-tash district. So I've now combined my opportunities with my account, and the data's now in Excel. So once it's in Excel, I've got all of the, sorry, I need to load that, excuse me. Let's just load that. So I've now got this merge sheet. There we go. Once I'm in Excel, I now have all of the functionality and reporting and analytical functionality within Excel. So I could go on, if I wanted to, and use Power View to create start creating sort of views and dashboards and the rest of it within Excel. So an Excel approach to interface to Salesforce using Power Query. Following on from that, what I'd like to do is go into Power BI. Now, let me see if this works. But it might not ask me to log it yet because I logged in earlier. So just to position Power BI, part of Office 365 really, in the cloud, I should say this is a preview, it's a public preview, and it's only really available in the States. So what we've got is a cloud offering in the States that I'm connected to at the moment, and I'm looking at this sort of US side. Yeah? It's essentially the next generation or the next release. We're expecting a sort of more formal release later this year. So it's still in there, it's still out there for preview for people to look at. But what we wanted to point out here was there's sort of a sort of further extension. You'll see that there isn't a shed load of data connectors at the moment, but one of them is Salesforce. So they see it as significant enough to make sure it's included. When I click on Salesforce and I go to connect, okay. Yeah. Good. So when we go into connect to Salesforce, first screen we'll get is this in essence. And what it is, what it provides is some pre-canned templates, essentially a set of reports and a dashboard based on a persona and the personas that you have. So if I select a dashboard here and I say, okay, I'm a sales manager, when I click connect, it'll connect to Salesforce and it'll create a dashboard. Like I say, sort of pre-canned, predefined, and a set of reports that go with that. So that's one thing to hold on to. I'll come back to that in a sec. The other thing is I can choose to select reports. So again, if somebody's defined a report that I'm interested in bringing through and building a dashboard on the top of, I can do that using reports. And there's my BI update. Sorry, there's my BI update 2015. Notice, some of you will have noticed actually, and it is the case, there is nowhere for me to select the objects. So I can't say, okay, I want to select the tables and I want to build up my own view currently. So in this particular release, we have these pre-canned templates or we have reports. And those will bring back through the data. Now I won't do that because it just takes a few minutes to bring through, and it's not that long actually. The data's not that large volume. But in essence, what you get is this. So I select sales rep, select dashboard. So as a sales rep at the top there, I get a predefined dashboard. And it will come through with this data defined. Sorry, and these reports defined. And once I'm in, if I select a particular view of the data, this is the report that underpins that dashboard view. Yeah, I can page through. There are a collection of those. There's 4 of those that support that first dashboard that we were looking at. Once I'm here, I could choose to edit the report. So if we select this particular report here and I choose edit, yeah. So now I'm in Power BI and I'm now editing my views. Notice on the right-hand side there, we've got the tables that it's brought through. So yeah, so it's brought through a collection of 5 tables. However, it's not brought all the fields through. It's only brought through those fields that it requires really for the dashboard itself. Let me just have a look at this. So I could take, if you took something like industry and I was to drop that in as a filter, I can now start filtering on the view itself. So I've now extended the view by including a filter, and that's really the extent of the sort of demonstration at this point. The thing to keep in mind here is the use of reports that Microsoft has latched onto, and these personas, these pre-canned personas, because we would expect those to extend and increase. Okay, so those are the 2 Microsoft demonstrations I wanted to go through. One was Power Query, and the other one is Power BI. I'm conscious that I'm flipping around the screen. The other sort of demonstration, sort of just by way of contrast, is to look at something like Tableau. And for those in the room familiar with Tableau, this is Tableau 9 beta. So we're expecting the release. I think the date has been given actually, but it's no date. April, early April. Okay, sorry. Yeah. So this is Tableau 9. This is the front screen as you start the product up. So familiar, but they've added a bit more colour, and it's probably a bit more engaging, I think, as a front end. Notice you've got the same set of connectors, and I can extend, for more servers. Those are familiar with Tableau. What I'm interested in doing here, I'll have to go to more servers. There it is, Salesforce. What I'm going to do is just log in. Bear with me 1 second. So this is the Tableau interface. Some of you will be familiar with that as an interface because in version 8, a lot of the sort of relational Excel type interfaces, connectors, use the same interface. But for any of you who've used Tableau against Salesforce in version 8, this is a much more improved, a much better interface. And I won't sort of dwell on the restrictions, but there were restrictions in 8. Well, it's just frustrating, really. It's just a bit more difficult to use. So we've got no view of reports. I can't see those Salesforce reports, unfortunately, because I think it's quite a nice functionality to have. But I do have the 190 odd tables. The objects at the top there, they're standard schemas. So if I had selected opportunities there, it would have dropped the schema onto the top panel. essentially it allowed us, and it would have taken all of the tables that relate to opportunities as a one-off. So that's done for the user. The user can then go to the sheet, it'll bring the data through, and you can then start developing your dashboards and doing your analytics and visuals off of that data. I suppose the thing to take out of it is that when you, from an individual perspective, from an ad hoc perspective, it is a challenge to understand that schema. Some of it is straightforward, so account to opportunity is a relatively straightforward relationship and self-evident when you look at the fields. But there are, when you get into the chatter, or if you look at group items, you look at some of the item lists that are in there as objects, that becomes a bit more of a challenge for an end user to try and deal with. So if I select opportunities, you get that schema appear. It gives you all of the fields. You can choose to hide some of those fields. You can rename those fields. But in terms of ETL, there isn't too much more I can do at this point. When I go back into my Tableau workbook, those are the tables. So it's organised dimensions and measures. And what you then get is a dashboard, which you can then build out. The one thing I really wanted to show here is, so the interaction. So we've taken that Salesforce data all the way from the, if you take the Salesforce dashboards, what we've done is we've moved on now. We've got in a bit more interaction. I can look at the US. I can look at how my opportunities are developing in the US. I can look at the industries that they relate to. So that big orange blob there is insurance. And I've got a set of opportunities that are available to me. And if I click on one of those, it will take me into, Allied Plastics. So I went from Allied Plastics in Tableau straight across to Allied Plastics. So you can link the two and make it context. And I think at that point I'll stop. Julie, you going to come up? Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Paul. So we've looked at 3 instances where the vendors are building particular links into the Salesforce platform, recognising that in order to carry out analytics on Salesforce data, the ability to get hold of that data, to do ETL as we saw with Power Query, to have these pre-canned templates, we saw that with Power BI, and really leverage the power of analytics within things like Salesforce with that drill back into the data. Really, really powerful ways of analysing Salesforce data. I'm now going to hand over to Gavin Gwinan, who has joined us from Salesforce. He's a Master Enterprise Architect, and Gavin is here today to talk to us a bit about what's coming out from Salesforce around analytics.